and welcome to the latest episode of the WRRAP podcast with me, Harley, as your current temporary host. I'm joined by the regular crew of Dan, Hattie, and Nick. For those of you on the YouTube, you may notice that there's a fifth person on the call. So I'm just going to get ahead and introduce our special guest, young Welsh ref Ben Breakspear. Ben's been refereeing professionally for the last couple of years now and has already been in the middle of games in the URC Challenge Cup, Rugby Europe Championship, as well as being involved in the sevens in France Olympics and in the recent under-20 championship in Italy. I'm going to just pass over to Nick quickly because he's going to explain how we managed to wrangle Ben onto the pod.
Yeah, poor Ben was sweating in the sense that we had exceptionally hot weather in Italy. That's certainly the time I was there, and he had the misfortune to be staying in the same hotel as me. But it was a pleasure to meet him and his colleague Reese as well, and just to chat a bit about rugby. And it was great that he agreed to come onto the pod to grill him. Hopefully, it's not going to be too traumatic, Ben.
I've grown some rhino skin over the years, Nick, so I'm sure I'll survive. Oh, well, that's anyway.
With that in mind, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, your rugby journey so far? You know, where did your interest for the game begin and so on, and what happened then?
Yeah, of course. I think I'd be the same as any other youngster who grows up in Wales, really. I think being a local kind of valley boy, rugby is in the blood, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'd grown up hoping that one day I'd put on that Welsh jersey and play in front of everyone else, but unfortunately that was never to be. So I started off at the age of 7 playing at my local rugby club in Abercynon. Just happened to be one day in school, one of my best mates said that he was going to go along to rugby training that evening. And I was just the inquisitive boy that I was at the time, tried to delve a little bit deeper and thought, well, my mates are going, I've got no one to go to play with tonight, so I might as well drag myself along. In the wet, windy nights of a Wednesday evening. But yeah, that's where it all started for me. So I spent a good couple of years playing local rugby there. Was lucky enough to play representative for the district and the county as well as I was growing up, and done that up until around the age of 16. And I was fortunate enough, actually this is where my transition to refereeing came then, was in secondary school, my head of physical education, Mr. Di Campbell, was a premiership referee at the time. And we come to GCSE moderation, and the practical element of it was to pick four practical things to be assessed on. So it's playing football, playing rugby, playing cricket. And he gave me the choice of doing athletics or doing cross country, and the shape I was in at the time, I don't think either best fitted my physical ability at that moment. So I done some, again, being inquisitive, what else could I do? And rugby refereeing was that other option. So got a lot of support from Di in that. Started off doing a couple of local school games and local club games, mini and junior stuff, and took off from there really. I was balancing that career for around 3-4 years, and then decided then that what opportunities were there for me playing and how far I would have gone playing in comparison to what could have been there for me as a referee, and weighed up the pros and cons and give it a full shot. And I've never really looked back since then. And I think starting at a young age really did work in my favour and has helped me achieve some of the accolades I have done up until now, you know.
And talking about that path, once you got to a certain level, were there assessments? How did they sort of decide that yes, Ben's a really promising ref, and these are the next steps for him?
Yeah, I think a lot of things tie into that. As you say, it's a very performance orientated business as the referee, and we are heavily scrutinised. There's no hiding place from that, whether it be locally on a Saturday, whether it be in the press, whether it be on social media. There's always nowhere to hide. So you start off by doing your level 1 refereeing course. And I was cursed that day because I was actually a Cardiff City season ticket holder, and it was actually the first Welsh derby in the Premier League that day, and I had to miss it for a refereeing course. I wasn't a very happy bunny, but yeah, went along to Cross Keys, done that qualification. As I say, got some experience refereeing young age grade stuff, and then it's an invitation then. So I expressed some interest to go and referee at level 2, which is youth and second team rugby, as we probably all know it. Done that induction process, spent a couple of months on that panel, being regularly reviewed, and I was quite fortunate, having shown some promise at a very young age, that I was quickly fast-tracked through that process. Was picked up by Nigel Owens. He kind of took me under his wing and helped support me in the development side with the support of Nigel Whitehouse, Paul Adams in the Welsh Rugby Union. And it was really just exposure then to games in the national leagues, you know. I think it was Division 3, I think I started off at, climbed from there, and within 18 months I was refereeing in the old Foster's Cup, if you can remember that. Swansea played Llanelli down on Parker Scarlett on a Wednesday evening just after my 18th birthday. That was my first test of Premiership rugby. And like you say, everything from there then has been performance based. And obviously, I've been thankful for the Welsh Rugby Union for supporting me in pushing me onto these external competitions. But likewise, then as soon as that opportunity comes, it's making sure that I'm ready and doing everything within my power to perform at that level to keep impressing as those opportunities come.
Obviously, when we were talking in Italy, you're saying that you have a job as well. So how, what's your game week like? How do you prepare? Ready for a match on Saturday?
Yeah, it's busy. I think gone are the days now. You always tend to get asked, what you do as a second employment, because I think a lot of referees traditionally would balance the full-time employment along with refereeing, and that's what I've been doing since I've started. I've recently taken up a job. I was a physiotherapist by background, but recently taken up a job full-time with the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. So balancing that, as well as one of my other colleagues who's probably more famously known than me, is Jenny Scoble, obviously representing the women, and obviously a proud ambassador of South Wales Fire and Rescue as well. So it is possible to manage the two, but I think Jenny will testify, and so will a lot of other professional athletes, that it's not always easy. The week for me, on a Monday, we're doing performance reviews. On the weekend, meeting with our own performance coach, meeting with a performance reviewer, trying to tie all of that off. The Tuesday then, obviously, as well as your own personal, physical and mental training. So Tuesday then, it's at the National Centre of Excellence down in Hensall, where we get together as a elite group of match officials, do our training, do a shared reviewed session, sharing experiences, discussing clips, low updates, all those kind of things. We also then have an academy session that evening. So Tuesday is a long day for us, because we then obviously take the reins and share some of our experience with the academy referees. Wednesday is the day we look forward to, because that's the day off. That's the one we get to spend in coffee shops and golf courses, so we always look forward to that one. And then it's back in on the Thursday then at the National Centre of Excellence, training together, prepping together for our games on the weekend, making sure all our final details in prep. And then Friday, traditionally being obviously a cross-border competition, is usually travel for us, refereeing in the URC or in Europe. Or likewise then, if we've got a home game, just spend an extra day of conditioning really, and just trying to dial in for the weekend. Usually referee on the Saturday, and then Sunday is obviously our day traveling back home then. So as you can imagine, trying to fit friends, family, partners and everything else into that, as well as a full-time job, is not easy.
No.
Somehow we've managed to find enough hours in the day, but yeah, it's a pretty full-on occupation.
And with regards to the different roles, obviously, 1 week I guess you might be refereeing, the following week, you might be on the touch, or even the fourth official or TMO. Is there any difference in preparation for those, or do you all come together anyway?
No, we've always come together. Obviously, the prep is slightly different. Every role is very unique. Every role has its individual skill sets. And we do have a philosophy that if we can all individually be excellent at our own roles, hopefully we'll all come together and deliver a performance that's expected of us, But like you say, in these competitions, all the players, coaches are all professional. So there's a level of expectation on us that we can deliver of the same standard, So preparation and being on top of our game and being ready to take those opportunities, is vitally important for us, no matter what role that we play in that game on a Saturday.
And obviously, you've alluded there to the fact that Monday is a review day. Is that who sort of leads that? How does that work?
It's very self-driven. So initially, we all go back through critique our own performances. every referee kind of has a different style. I know the law book is the law book, but how we apply that and how we interpret that is very individual. So we all kind of critique our own individual performances. That's backed up then by our own performance coaches. So lucky that Nigel Owens has stayed in my corner. So Nigel is coaching me. So me and Nigel will look at that game together then and compare our notes. And then we will go into a selectors review meeting then. So there'll be an independent referee advisor or performance reviewer, as we call him these days, that would have watched the game, and then he or she will share their views. I will share my views and come to a collective outcome and agreement then, which will be taken into a wider selection panel meeting on a Tuesday evening then, which we don't get to sit on as referees, but all the URC selected will sit and rate your performance then based on other referees that weekend.
And I guess with any official, when things go well, you have a good game, people don't comment. When things perhaps are missed, or that's where, unfortunately, especially with social media in particular, there's a lot of pushback. What's part of that process? If there's like a glaring area, there were a couple of things in the weekend, for instance, which seemed to the casual viewer that were, I thought there was a forward pass in the last Australian try, and obviously the biting incident in the women's game. But for whatever reasons, those things weren't picked up, and not, that's collective because the TMO was there. Are there learnings taken when things don't go quite as perhaps they should?
Yeah, definitely. Firstly, I'll be honestly admitting that I wasn't up at 5:30 watching that Australia game, so I won't be commenting on that one. And unfortunately, I was refereeing for the second one. But yeah, you're right. It would be great if we could all be perfect and we all come singing or dancing with clean hands. But unfortunately, with refereeing, despite all the technology, there is elements of human judgment and unfortunately sometimes human error. And I think the accountability, and I think that's the biggest thing is, as a group of referees, we don't try and be defensive. We may come across that way, but in our own safe space, we are all very accountable. And when we do pick up these moments of learnings, we will go away and look at what went wrong. How can we be better? And it's always difficult. And I feel for our TMO sometimes because we go to some countries to operate and everyone says you've got the technology, you can see this, and people just think that this stop, start, rewind. But the amount of work that they do behind the scenes, interacting with directors, getting the correct angles, getting the right replays, processing that data within the time frame, within a window of opportunity. Yes, we have the technology to help us, but those guys work incredibly hard in the background to try and get all that. So ultimately, with the amount of work that they have and the time pressure on them, there's obviously that element of human judgment and sometimes error as well. But for sure, they will be reviewed in those review meetings on a Monday and discussed, and we do sometimes take the punishment for that. Selection is based on accuracy, big moments, big match defining decisions. Yes, you might still see our names in the appointments, but we have paid the price for that on the back end of the review.
Can I just ask you a related question? So obviously this weekend the weather was not great. Especially where the 4 women's quarterfinals were in Exeter and Bristol. It was absolutely chucking it down with rain, and it was actually something that our other podcasts that I'm on, Women's Rugby Treehouse, we were discussing, and we were saying oh, was it harder for the referees because the weather was so bad? Were they potentially leaning more on the TMO? And as a referee, I just wanted to know your experience with inclement weather, I guess.
No,
if it affects it.
Yeah, that's quite a good question, Hattie, and I think that plays a massive part into our preparations. Ultimately the weather changes the way teams play, changes game dynamics, changes everything. You might end up having a lot more kick battles, you might end up having a lot more scrums in the game, which is a lot wetter, or so our plan then is thinking, how can we referee kick contests, how can we referee offsides, how can we be better at managing the scrum, which might be different in a free-flowing game where you're thinking, we need to be really strong on the tackler, speed the ball, that kind of thing. So yeah, it does probably change our preparation just in terms of going into that environment and knowing where we need to probably invest a little bit more time. However, the relation to the TMO there, I think going back to what I alluded on earlier on is we all just try to be world class at our own roles. We have a philosophy where we try to be strong on field in everything that we do. I think what you tend to get in the weather is you tend to get a lot more dubious grounding clips because balls are kind of out of hands or close to touch lines and that kind of thing. Obviously, in those moments, it sits within the remit of the TMO. So I wouldn't say necessarily we rely more on them. I just think the weather probably plays a key part where the TMO naturally gets more involvement because of because of we're being presented with. But yeah, as I say, the better we can all be at doing our own roles well. The ultimate aim is to hopefully keep the TMO out of the game as much as we can, which always is, and that's nothing to do with their ability. I think it's just, I know we've come to a lot of scrutiny for the time that we spend at screens, and there was experience with a lot of that. So, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No problem.
You mentioned obviously the work you've done with Nigel Owens. Do you have any other sort of rugby heroes, officials or players?
Yeah, growing up, I was an outside half by trade, so coming up being in Wales, we were gifted with them in the times. As me being from Abercynon, you obviously had Neil Jenkins playing down at Ponty. Come behind him, you had Dan Bigger, James Hook. So I think growing up, all of those were kind of idols for me as a player. And then naturally, when you shift to refereeing, it's hard to look much further than Nigel himself, who I'm fortunate to call a good friend now, and obviously Wayne Barnes as well. I was lucky to have some good interactions with him. I think just being in that environment now in the professional game, sharing on different experiences with other lads who've been there and experienced it, it's just a great part to be able to call some of those idols your friends now, which is something I've always dreamed of doing. So it's great for me.
Have you ever refereed Dan Bigger? Because he's usually got quite strong opinions about lots of things when he's playing.
I haven't, no. Unfortunately, because I would love to share the field with him. But yeah, he unfortunately moved on, but as I broke into the professional game, so I haven't had that privilege, unfortunately.
What's been the highlight of your career so far then?
It's a tough one. I was actually sitting down at the end of last season after I sat with you, Nick, and we had a good chat in Verona, didn't we, around this? And I think I've been very fortunate to have a lot of accolades and milestones at such a young age in my career. And a lot of it did come thick and fast. I think it'd be hard to look far past refereeing the under-20s World Cup final in that tournament back in the summer, but New Zealand, South Africa, that was pretty special, and a massive achievement. But I think even going back a bit further than that, just the Paris Olympic final, where I was lucky enough to be on touch, just the whole show of it, being in Paris, the Stade de France was full, being there to listen to Le Marseillaise, Dupont come on, wins the game against Fiji. It was just scripted to just it was what it was meant to be, and to be able to play a part in that was pretty special. I think we get so focused on the environment at the time and doing a job. It's only when you step away you actually get a chance to take that all in, and it will be hard to beat that one for me. I think that Olympic final.
And looking forward, then are you hoping to get to break into full internationals, either men's or women's? What would be sort of a dream game for you to referee?
Yeah, I think that's naturally the next step for me now on my career path of what I want to achieve. As a player, you want to get captain, and as a referee, ultimately you want to achieve the same goal. So a tier 1 test match is hopefully in the future for me, when I can get on and tick off, and even referee at the full World Cup again would be amazing. A dream game. It's quite tough to pinpoint a specific game. You've got a lot of the Freedom Cup on the weekend, the Bledisloe Cup, just any game in the Six Nations, just the atmosphere and the vibe that you get around those tournaments.
Indeed.
Just to referee one of those games would be pretty special.
And just a sort of a parochial question then, obviously you've done Welsh derbies. How do you find them? Are they harder or easier to manage than, say, other URC games?
Again, it depends. Massively depends. I think traditionally the Welsh derbies are a lot harder because you tend to get them around Christmas time when the weather isn't great. You tend to have a lot more scrums. Obviously, you have good friends competing against each other for a red jersey, which everyone would die for get on their back. So there is a lot of tension and energy around those games. But likewise, I refereed the Dragons Scarlets on the weekend, and it was a great game of rugby to referee. Two teams that wanted to play rugby, very limited scrums, and they are excellent. So, I mean, it literally all depends. I think pressure plays a massive part on those games. What's riding on it for the teams, different stage of the year, different competitions. I'm probably going to run the Mulberry Bush, but I think they can be harder, Nick. But I think it's very circumstantial as well. I know they're the games when you get that you put a lot of extra prep into because you know they're not easy.
That's great. That's it for me. I think Dan's got the next question.
Thanks, Nick. You grilled Ben enough there, really. I suppose we have to pay him overtime now, I reckon, after
Who'd have thought a couple of minutes in the shade and it
who'd have thought it was like being on an episode of Parkinson's. There we are, I tell you what. For the older generation, that is. I suppose stepping away from the on-field stuff, Ben, just is interested in your opinion on maybe more the political element of refereeing at the moment. I suppose there's two elements to the question. Number one, you may have seen it in sort of Wales Online articles and on X and so on and so forth that there's a little bit of shortage. There's a referee shortage allegedly at the moment, which I think the union are kind of denying. And then there's the element that especially the more top end of the game, sort of SRC and above, maybe prioritising and into the professional element of refereeing. They're prioritising people that are under 25. I just wondered if you could shed a bit of light on that, I suppose, to stop the rumour mill that goes online, and whether you had any sort of opinion on it.
Yeah, of course. I think me individually as an individual, I don't have much to do with that community end of the game. Obviously, sitting in the elite end of the game, I not tried to actually. I just naturally distance myself from that and where I go with it. But in terms of the bad press and stuff that we've had over the last couple of weeks, I think as a refereeing department, a shortage of referees has always been something that we've naturally struggled with. I think the number of teams have gone up, the number of games have gone up. And I think the age profile, this isn't going to answer your first question, Dan, but the age profile of referees has quickly changed. We had a lot of older people who would finish playing at maybe the age of 30, 35, would then filter into refereeing. And I think naturally that game has changed now to get younger boys through. So we would have lost a lot of older head referees just through naturally the aging process, which we got heavily reliant, I would say, probably a couple of years ago. So obviously that left a backfill shortage. So I think a shortage for us has been something that's always been felt in the background, and now we're working really hard in the background on recruitment, retention, and development of referees as well to try and bridge that gap. But I think the biggest thing for me to try and help fill that void is just looking back at the opportunities that I got coming into the game as a youngster or as an ex-player. The opportunities there as a referee are endless. If you step in and you get the love for it. So I think as a challenge to everyone out there who's saying we got shortages, like it's a great opportunity for others to get involved and help out your local clubs, help out your local community. We're trying hard as a union, but without the personnel off the field we're willing to buy into that. We see it as referees all the time. People are happy to sit behind keyboards and put their things on Wales Online out there on Twitter. It's just a challenge to just come forward and try it. You might enjoy it, you might not enjoy it, you might have some great opportunities. But without the bodies to come into that system and help us, it's hard for us to pull a miracle from the sky. Then going back to the other question there, Dan, just around the age thing. As I said, naturally, I think the demographic of referees has changed. You've only got to look at our 4 or 5 Welsh representatives in the URC at the minute, with myself, Adam Jones, Craig Evans, Ben Whitehouse, Ben Connor. I don't think there's any coincidence that we all started refereeing in our late teens. I wouldn't say it's a selection marker, but you look at the average age of a test match referee now being 30, 35, and you look at what I've spoke to earlier on in this podcast regarding the process I've gone through to climb the ladder, get exposure. I've been refereeing 10 years now, and I'm still not in that elite environment with World Rugby. So you think if I'm 27, it's going to take me another possibly 2 years, 29, to then solidify. You're looking 33. So I think as a youngster now, if that door closes for you as a player or you don't miss it, getting into refereeing is definitely an option to stay involved in the game as well as a coach. But I think that's where we've been driven with obviously Ian Davis coming as an elite manager, with the target of getting referees to a Rugby World Cup. There's no secret in saying we've had no Welsh referee in a Six Nations or at the World Cup since Nigel Owens himself retired back in 2019. And I don't quote me on this, but I want to say something that before Nigel Owens, we hadn't had a referee. If you take Nigel out of the equation, we haven't had a referee at the World Cup for 23 years, which isn't a great start to Welsh rugby, or at least for the refereeing department. So Ian had a massive task on his shoulders in getting referees to there. Obviously, I've been fortunate to get those opportunities. Referee the Junior World Cup final. You've got Ben Connor now in the URC. You've got Craig, Ben, Whitehouse, Adam Jones. So we've actually got a real strong contingent of competitive referees in that environment now, knocking on the doors. But the recruitment drive then is looking, if you've got Craig for 2027, myself for 2031, Ben Connor for 2035, who comes in 39, who comes in 43, and we're actually planning now 12 years ahead. And that's where that drive comes from, really, is just investing in people of the demographic that World Rugby are targeting, what that external data is showing us that can drive our mission of getting people to World Cups. How that then's had a knock-on effect on the community game. Obviously, you said, Dan, that there was obviously a shortage. I haven't had much interaction with that, but I'm obviously assuming that that's lost people's drive and incentive. But my point being is the age just isn't the only selected as referees. There's people out there still refereeing in the Premiership, top end of the Championship in Wales, that are getting opportunities. So people who persevere and stay good at the job do still get the opportunities, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose the way you put it, the amount of time it takes to get that top end, if it's going to take you 10 years to get to a World Cup, for example, if you're not picking up refereeing until you finish playing, and if you have a dabbling coach and you're 40, that means you're going to be 50.
Yeah, of
In
course.
theory, again, well, the reality is that's probably not good to anyone, is it? You know, the demand even on yourselves as referees physically to be able to get around the park and meet your sort of fitness markers and so on and so forth. That's much easier to do at 25 and 35 than it is at 50 and 55. So I suppose it sort of answer my own question there, to a point as well.
But I think there's still a place in the game for ex-players as well. A lot of the counter arguments is you look at Carl Dixon now, who's probably one of the best in the world at the moment. People will come at me and counter argue that as well, but that's the joys of refereeing. But within the refereeing space, Carl's one of the best in the world at the minute, and he obviously played many years of scrum half for Harlequins, albeit professionally. The knowledge and the experience that those kind of players bring into the game are so much value to us as referees that we can learn off, that still have a place high up in the community game as well. So if there's any players out there that are thinking of what can my journey look like, traditionally a lot of players go into coaching, but if you want to stay involved in the game and stay active, refereeing is a great path for that, and there is many of opportunities.
Yeah.
I started off at 17, and I was quite fortunate in my early 20s that rugby was taking me around the world, giving me exposure and opportunities I never would have had. One of my mates from Pontypridd is going away to Dubai Sevens this year now, and he's late 30s, early 40s, refereeing the Dubai Sevens. So even for people at that age, there's still opportunity if it works for you, you know.
Yeah, and I think as well, sort of to back the referees up here, especially in the community games, sort of Premiership down, I suppose. Like I coach in the Championship now, and it's hard for referees. You're on your own. You know, you got no ARs, there's no TMOs or anything like that. You got to manage everything. You know, I don't know, at our home games, there's probably 800 people present. Everyone's a better referee than you are. When you're on there making decisions, it's not going for their team, and it's a really difficult position to be in, I think. And you know, you can't see everything. If you've got your back turned at the scrum, the outside centre's trying to creep a couple of yards, and it's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? So I think the rugby public, in reality, have got a job to do as well, I think, in getting off referees' backs, because otherwise it's a bit of a thankless job, really, isn't it? Because you only ever get stick. No one ever really shakes your hand and goes, "Oh, well done. You were really good today," in the bar afterwards. If you haven't blown the whistle that much.
Yeah, it's tough. But, you know, there's a double-ended sword here because we only do really see the bad side of it. I know
Yeah,
the Welsh Rugby Union running a campaign this season in the community game with respect the ref, and you'll see that visible on the back of our jerseys now. And I think that's what we are asking for back, as well as understanding, you know, the work that these people do. It's not full time. It's not their job. They give up
absolutely.
Saturdays like players,
Yeah,
coaches, like spectators to go out and enjoy rugby. And we are trying to, and I always say this, is we try and get a model where every stakeholder in the game is invested in Welsh Rugby. We work together as players, coaches, referees, spectators.
yeah,
That's the only way we can drive this game forward. If we start working individually and going, coaches will do this, players will do this, refs will do this. I think Nick would have probably seen it as well. The S4C thing that came out in the week regarding referee abuse and the amount of referees that's driven away from the game, and that was purely in the community game. So we get an article saying we've got a shortage of referees. No one wants to referee. Our game is off on the weekend. Dub boy, who can give us a referee? And then the other side of the article is you've got referees coming forward and saying we don't want a ref because when we come and referee you, you've got nothing good to say about us and you're just giving us a negative experience.
yeah.
And that's that never-ending cycle that we're in. You know, unless we buy into this process together, come forward and try referee and come forward and support referee, and we're never going to be able to improve that shortage. But likewise, I have been in clubs and in games where I have had praise and I have had thanks. Unfortunately to say, it's not as frequent as we do get some of the negative messaging, but there are some people out there that do respect the time that boys and girls give up on the weekend to go and facilitate a game of rugby, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely no. And yeah, if we can get any message out of this, let's try and get some more people into refereeing, I think, because it's a tough task.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, when you said about the WRU and kind of like this process of getting referees into like the higher levels, I was going to say like one of like the recent big things I guess that's happened is that Amber Stamp is like the first female Welsh referee to referee at a World Cup, which I think is like another thing. It's like pretty massive, and it's pretty cool to see that happen, because I know for a really, really long time we just haven't had any Welsh female referees at a high level. So it's cool to actually see somebody doing well, and they're not just all English, which is normally how it works.
No, you're right, and I think Amber, you're right in what you're saying. They had the Amber breaking into the Women's World Cup group this year has been amazing for us, and amazing for Amber as well. The work that she's put in behind the scenes has gone unnoticed, really. But you even got to look a little bit further as you look at Jenny Davis, ex-Welsh international, Jess Kavanagh also as well, Welsh international, both now turned to refereeing and TMOing as ways of staying in the game, and the pathways that opens for them. And we encourage those people as well, you know, females who want to get involved in the game or who have stopped playing and want to jump across. There is opportunities there. Amber, likewise, being able to manage a full-time employment as well as officiate at the Women's World Cup is incredible for her at such a young age, and she's obviously destined for bigger and better things now in the next coming years. And hopefully, come the next World Cup in 4 years' time, we'll actually get a Welsh referee there with a whistle and be able to fly that flag.
So, Ben, so thank you for all your time. We've just got a couple of questions from the Twitter. If you wouldn't mind staying just a little bit longer, and then we'll let you go. I'll wrap them all up. They're all sort of roughly on similar lines. So Zach asks, how do you cope on field with pressure from fans, coaches, players? And then Low Force on Twitter says, basically after the whistle, is that pressure still there, or does everyone become more friends again?
Yeah, I think pressure is the big one. You know, it's the environment that we operate in. I think exposure to that pressure helps you build coping strategies, coping mechanisms, and everything that comes with that. And I think just within the game, I think the amount of connections you can build, as I was just saying in response to Dan's question, there is trying to build an environment where every stakeholder is trying to drive the same message, trying to build relationships with players, trying to build relationship with coaches definitely helps. I think dealing with the pressure is just being able to, it's probably not the right word to say, but hopefully the message comes across, is be good at conflict managing, understanding that people get heated in certain moments and it's not personal. I'm not saying that's okay to say things that are out of line, but just in terms of if a decision goes against someone, naturally there's going to be frustration, but being able to allow that to cool down and have a rationalized conversation after it, and not so much justify, but share understanding. you'd be surprised how many games I do where players or coaches get frustrated, but just because there's an element of low knowledge that's missing. And when you actually understand that and apply that and actually allow them to understand it, they get a better understanding, and everyone shares that learning process. Again, back to your question about after the final whistle, I wouldn't say forgive and forget. I think the higher up you go as well, I think obviously you're playing with people's jobs and people's livelihoods, so decisions are obviously a lot more important. Not that they're not important lower down in the game, but every decision has added pressure in the game. So there is a lot of meetings and discussions that go on post match. But I think the same philosophy applies to that, really, as if you can build strong, it doesn't have to be friendships, just strong professional working relationships with coaches, with players, and have a level of understanding that there's nothing wrong in saying, sorry, mate, I got that wrong. Just being honest and saying, I've learned from this. I know it doesn't change the outcome now. I'm not saying sorry is the answer, but being able to take that as learning and drive that forward, you get a lot more respect from players and coaches for being honest in those environments instead of trying to get defensive.
The last.
Sorry, Dan.
Sorry, Hal, I was just going to jump in there and say, I think it's important that coaches and especially realise that, ref may get the odd decision wrong, but the ref haven't missed any tackles, haven't not pushed in the scrum, haven't overthrown the line out, haven't kicked it out on the full and done all of those sorts of things. Those are player errors, and if you lose by, all right, maybe if it's a final penalty at the end of the game or so on and so forth, but it's so easy to blame external factors in there when the reality is the boys on the field had ample opportunity to stop that big forward running around the corner and put him on the floor before he stuck it down underneath the post for a 7-pointer. So yeah, I do get the referee factor sometimes, but all the time I think, or most of the time I think, there are more internal playing factors that should be focused on before the referee's decision making.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you raised there, Dan. I think like we can't hide from the elements. Ultimately, we are adjudicating on a game. We are going to have some element to play in decision, whether it be right, whether it be wrong, high impact decisions as we call them, those last minute penalties, those red cards, those kind of things. But I think I can't remember the stats, and I'm not going to try and be a statistician, but out of all the 1,000 of decisions we make in a game, whether that's probably 5 or 6 at every breakdown, every scrum, offsides, and that kind of thing, for referees to have an accuracy of over 95% is pretty good, I'd like to say. It's just unfortunate we get our hard tongues up on that one decision that obviously people will remember, and we do try and avoid them where we can. But overall, we'd like to say that we are pretty consistent as a group.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So the final question, well, I mean, he tried to sneak in 2 questions there, Rob, on Twitter. So the first part of the question I was going to say is, given how dynamic the laws of rugby, they seem to be changing every year, what do you think, what would you like to happen to sort of help support referees to, give their decision better? Is it education to the people watching? Is it, is maybe an extra, would you think an extra official would be helpful? If it was in your power, what do you think you'd do?
Yeah, I think it's quite hard. I think myself, I sometimes got to take my refereeing hat off and put myself back into. I'm just a big rugby fan who loves rugby and sit there as a spectator, and I do find it quite difficult to follow sometimes when we have so many law variables, and it takes someone 8 months to settle into these new laws, and then all of a sudden we get 4 more new ones and 5 more new ones, and sometimes I think we do make it a little bit difficult to follow. But it's hard because we probably could go down a route where people will say, let's all get more technology, let's be like tennis, let's get Hawkeye, let's let AI referee for us, and everything will be perfect. Look, our game's not black and white, unfortunately. There is an element of grey there. And it does take that element of subjective knowledge and understanding to make those decisions. Not everything is objective. And again, I know we have a law book, but if I was to blow every decision in the law book, we'd probably have 100 penalties in the game and no continuity. And who wants to pay £150 to watch that every Saturday? Not many people. So I think the answer for us is just to probably try and better educate the spectators and the supporters, because we do very good as a refereeing group to educate each other and get alignment to try and build consistency. Whether that be at World Rugby, at URC, EPCR, WRU, but that rollout then to the fans has to be a lot more understandable for those people. And you won't always get buy-in from everyone. You're always going to have someone that disagrees. But I think the more people you can have understand allows them to take an educated view on what they think are right is wrong. We could sit in a referee debate, put one clip on the screen, and 6 people be at red card, 7 people be at yellow card. What's the right answer then? You know, you're always going to have a decision to split the room. But if you give people the information to make educated judgments, those opinions then hold value and hold weight, as opposed to us getting sometimes nasty comments, which literally sometimes have no knowledge behind them, you know.
Can I just add to that, Ben? With the forthcoming season now, especially the URC level, you know, are there any things as fans then should be thinking, oh, there's going to be a little bit more of a scrutiny of this sort of area of the play?
Yeah, I obviously we had those new law trials that came in back in January this year, which have been rolled out in the national leagues in August this year, just around the protection of the scrum half, the 60-second conversion, 30-second scrums, not straight at lineouts, to all build continuity. And I think that's still our biggest, or not our biggest, they're still our focus going into this season,
okay,
as well as our core fundamentals of safety, speed, and space. There's nothing new that's come in into the elite game. Obviously, the 20-minute red card trial is potentially something to keep your eyes on, and that probably making its way into other global competitions outside of the international window potentially in the next coming months. So, but other than that, I think the laws have all stayed pretty similar. But like you say, we go through test windows, and the review system that takes place post-test window then judges what areas our focus is going into Six Nations, going into Europol competition. So as of new laws, there's nothing, but there will be a constant evaluation of areas where we can be better as officials to best facilitate the game.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I could come up with question after question after question, but I think we'll park it there just to be fair on your time as well. And we've also got a preseason reviews to go on with. So I'd just like to say on behalf of the panel, thank you very much, Ben, for taking the time. And good luck for the season with whichever games you get given in the middle or elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Harley. Really appreciate the time, and thanks for having me on as a guest. I've really enjoyed it.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i ti.
Nice one, Ben.
Well, ta-ra.
Good night, mate.
Big thanks again to Ben for taking his time. Now, moving on to normal business at hand. I hear it's a very brief news desk for you, Nick.
Yeah, not much really. Obviously, we've got the consultation going on, but proper stuff around rugby. Reece Patchell, 32, has announced his retirement from rugby. I think we all agree he's was a very talented outside half. Very unfortunate with injuries, and as a consequence, only played 23 times for Wales. I'm sure would he have played a lot more had he had a bit more luck with injuries. And as anticipated, he'll take up a part-time position for kicking coach for the Dragons. Do you think that's adding something to the coaching ticket then, Pat Rodney Parade?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a good addition. We've touched on it before, haven't we? On the pod that I hope we can get a little bit more out of him as well, and just working with the kickers on technique and so on and so forth. I hope he's brought in to build a bit of a kicking strategy, and then ultimately as well leaned on for maybe some attack policy and so on and so forth. Because once you got that mind in the room, you may as well use it.
Definitely. Former Scarlet and rugby Gogledd scrum half Evan Jones was released by the Scarlets last year and is signed for Amtil in the English Championship. So all the best to him. Good luck to him. Good luck, Ivo. And I guess the big news is that Danny Wilson, 49, recently head coach at Harlequins, is joining Steve Tandy as an assistant coach. He's got extensive experience in Welsh Rugby, coached in Scotland, and most recently he was the interim forward coach of the national team's tour of Japan. And Dave Redding said he thought he would be a great addition to the coaching team, bring a skill set which is very complementary to Steve Tandy's, and he thinks he'll have a really good positive impact. So I think his last job in Wales was with Cardiff. Do you want to kick off, Harley, with your view on that appointment?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, I think I rate Danny Wilson quite highly as coach. I mean, what he managed to do with Cardiff with both hands tied around his back in terms of who he could sign, his budget, and all sorts of things, and he still brought us to a European trophy. I don't think he hadn't necessarily the time he'd like to embed what he needed, but I did think it out in Japan, our forwards did show a little bit more than what, even if the line out was wonky. If I'll be polite about it. It's very interesting to notice that he's listed as a line out and contact skills coach, leaving the scrum up in the air. So I don't know when that bomb might drop, who that could be. And I have no knowledge yet which way or another. But I think it could potentially be a good appointment. I think the proof's going to be in the pudding. But what I will say is for Tandy, Wilson, and any other coaches, let's at least give them a full international season or so just to bed in and get things working, because they're going to need to get to know each other, know the players. And, there's an awful lot of rot to shake off that Wales team before we should really be expecting much.
Question for you, Harriet. I think you mentioned in the last part about Wales women's not having a kicking coach.
No kicking coach. So, there's no kicking coach. So if anybody a certain new Dragons coach would like to help out,
yeah, exactly,
would be quite appreciative. I mean, also there is Danny Wilson's wife, I believe, has also worked as a coach. She's a former Wales international, former Wales fly half. So don't know if she's, back in the area, if that's getting involved. But literally anybody, the role is open. Please come help. Although I'm sure Sean Lynn will be emptying the backroom staff and getting some new blood in, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. And that's the news, Harley.
So obviously, since we last recorded, Wales women did have this third and final and losing game in the World Cup. I don't want to reopen that wound for anyone, especially not Hattie. If you want to hear her very insightful opinions on that, please check out the Women's Rugby Treehouse. And if you were interested in any other podcasts, whether they be Dragons, Ospreys, they've both started, Cardiff, feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube. Check out all the other podcasts on the channel. We also have the Global Game Line, where we have pods for those of South African or Irish disposition. United Rugby Rewind has finally restarted after its long hiatus. So there's plenty of comment. And as always, please feel free to comment your opinions, good, positive, negative. If you'd like to have more guests like Ben on the podcast, please let us know. I'm sure Lee is eager to respond to you.
Lee loves a sassy comment.
He definitely loves a sassy comment. Now, we're getting into sort of pre-season times, so we are going to start in reverse finishing order from the URC in terms of the Welsh team. So we're starting off with the Dragons with Dan. So Dan, can you just sort of let us know who's come in, who's come out, who's gone out of the squad, how's your pre-season gone so far, and then we'll start going into where we think they might place in the following season.
Well, that's the first bit of shithousery of the season, isn't it? We'll start in reverse order.
Yeah,
so bottom
exactly,
to
Dan.
the top. Yeah. Thank you very much. And just for that, I'm going to take ages and ages and ages now. Okay, so there's actually a fair bit going on at the Dragons, isn't there? And I'm probably only going to touch upon it here, so I will drop a nod to the boys at Dragons Layer. If you want a full, in-depth look at the Dragons pre-season stuff and the boys there, Jamie et al. And Gareth, etc., and what they've got going on, there's a full 2-hour plus pod already sort of up on our socials and on Spotify, etc. So go and have a listen to that. But here we go then, deep breath. As we already know, Rhys Patchell have come in. I think everyone's massively happy with that. I think it's a good rugby brain, and I hope they get more than just a little bit of kicking technique out of him. However, that is very much needed, as I think the Dragons were in the sort of 70-odd% last year for conversion rate of kicks at goal. And there's no doubt about it, if we can improve that alone, we'd have won more games last year than we did, which not hard because we only won one. But there you go. So that's a good start and a positive for us. Ollie Griffiths has come back into camp as well. A well-renowned local Gwent legend, Ollie, suffered from a an early retirement due to a spinal problem, whereby he had a cyst or a tumor on the spine, is my understanding. I'm glad to be corrected on the full medical assessment there, but that sort of ended his playing career. He was probably really unlucky with injuries over his career as well, and probably deserved more than his 2 Wales appearances. I think he had 1 Wales full Welsh cap and an appearance against the Barbars as well. And he's come in on an S&C basis. And I would have thought, above anything else, irrespective of his knowledge and all his qualifications, he'll be good just for the boys to have him around. You know, friendly face, good in the change room, brings plenty of rugby knowledge as well, and not just sort of strength and conditioning knowledge. So hopefully that'll be a good asset to the Dragons over the coming season. We've also added a defence coach. Dale McLeod's come over from New Zealand. I saw him up close and personal when the Dragons did their road show. He was doing some coaching, some one-to-one tackle tech stuff up at Abertlery Park with when the Dragons came up to train as part of their sort of community engagement stuff. Seems like a real nice guy. Not that I've spoken to him on a one-to-one basis, but the players seem to be taking on board everything he was saying. You know, seemed to have a nice calm manner about him as well. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more structure and a little bit more bite in terms of our D this year, because obviously Philo came in to do it, but due to the Di Flanagan move out of the organisation, then it meant that Philo was doing, well, effectively what Di was doing in multiple roles. So hopefully that'll give us a bit more bite and we'll be a bit harder to break down over the coming season. And then in terms of player, I've got them up in front of me actually because there's so many. In terms of player arrivals, players out, we've actually I think we've actually had 22 players out in total. We've had a few leaving the season, a couple of notable ones being Steph Hughes, Ollie Griffiths, as I mentioned, Leon Brown through retirement. And then the likes of Scott Williams, who sort of came and went throughout the season as well. Dane Black has gone back to the Scarlets, Tane Basham to Cardiff, Dan Liddy at the British Lion has retired, but is also staying on as a contact coach at the Dragons, so that's some good continuity there. I think some of those names we probably miss. You know, however, the reality is probably Dan was at the sort of peak of his powers a few years ago and was on his way out. And ultimately, sort of, we've been carrying the likes of Leon and Ollie for a while, actually, due to their injury profiles, hadn't we? So we hadn't actually, got our bang for buck in terms of those two, unfortunately, due to their level of ill health over their playing career. And in terms of the incoming players, I'll list them all for you now because there's 16 of them in total. So we've added Wyn Jones, Dylan Lewis, and Rob Hunt in the front row. Loose head and 2 tight heads. I think they're 3 brilliant acquisitions, and I think they've so far so good. We saw them briefly on in the Scarlets game. Scrum, I thought set piece was pretty good, but we'll touch on that a little bit more now. We've added Levi Douglas, who's a big second row sign from Biarritz, and Seb Davis from Cardiff. Tom Young and Mackenzie Martin have come in. Tom Young's come in on a permanent deal, but Mackenzie Martin's come in on a loan from Cardiff. I think I spoke to Jamie briefly in the week who went down on Saturday to watch him. Big guy, his ball carrying was impressive. So hopefully we can get the best out of him in our back row. We've added Niall Armstrong from Exeter. The Irish scrum half comes in at 25 years of age to bolster our scrum half options. Tinas De Beer and Jack Lloyd have come in. Jack Lloyd's probably got the highest ceiling out of the two of them. However, he's only 22 years of age and comes in from the SRC. Good rugby player, Jack, if anyone's watched him play at Newport. Tinas De Beer, season before last, I thought he was fantastic for Cardiff, if I'm honest, and thought he was probably a bit unlucky not to play more often down at Cardiff. With Sheedy coming in, I don't dislike Callum Sheedy, but Tinas De Beer probably did enough to keep the jersey a little bit more often than he was allowed to. Then we've had the 2 Tongan internationals coming in. I don't want to butcher any names here, but Piers come in from Zebra. He can play outside centre, he can play inside or outside centre. I'm hoping he'll give us some go forward in midfield, and we'll solidify that defence for us as well. And Inisi comes in on the wing from Moana Pacifica in Super Rugby. So there's a little bit of X factor there and a level of physicality to our backline that the Dragons have probably missed or not even had over the last few seasons. We've also added Di Richards, full back or utility back really from Newport. I don't know whether anyone here has seen Di previously, but he was in the Dragons setup a few years ago. He's got the ability to be a little bit box office, I think, in the right environment. I think he dropped out the pro game into the SRC, having had a little bit of a run of injury. So hopefully we can keep him fit and he'll be a good addition to the squad. And then we've added Cody Pennell from Bath and James Talamai from Saracens into the academy sort of setup as well. Both front row forwards, prop and a hooker respectively. And in terms of our academy signings, probably Harry Beddle would be the one there that is the standout. He comes in from Leicester officially, but I know he'd been playing at Hartpury University as well, playing Buck Super Rugby, and we'll all know him as the Dragons 20s captain. All muck and bullets, I would say Harry Beddle, you expect nothing less than sort of 15, 20 tackles a game. Probably needs to add a little bit of bulk to his young frame, but ultimately I think he's a fantastic addition as well. So I don't know what you guys think, but all in all, I think those are 16 good signings. We've added good depth to our squad chart, and a lot of international quality in there as well, which I think is fantastic. I was doing a brief count yesterday and the day before. I think the Dragons have got, we could, for the first time in a while, maybe if ever, put an international pack on the field, which I think is brilliant, and with backup off the bench. So, yeah, let's watch this space. I'm quietly confident. We've gone well over pre-season. We travelled to Hartpury University, played their championship team, who were a solid mid-table championship side, and we put them to the sword, really, scoring 40-odd points. We beat the Scarlets on Saturday at home, 33-28. As I touched on previously, I thought the set piece was good. Physicality from the forwards, we had some proper go forward at times. We even managed to see Funaki come off the bench, and I know some people from the Dragons lair thought that he didn't actually exist and he was just a phantom, but he does exist and he has made an appearance. So there's another guy effectively that's like a new signing for us, because he didn't play at all last year due to injury. So that was good. And Westwood Junior picked up a hat-trick on the weekend, so it's a good start for young Joe Westwood there. I'll give a little nod to the 18s who continued there, who actually completed a good block of results, only losing once, and that was down at the Arms Park in a high scoring affair down there. They beat the Scarlets. They also beat the Scarlets, their counterparts from West Wales, 12-10. Low scoring affair, but if you saw the weather, even the Otters went on strike. So I'm not surprised it was a 12-10, one for the purist maybe. But all in all, I'm really pleased with the additions on the coaching setup and on the player front. I sort of said tongue in cheek, in our WhatsApp group earlier on, I think we should be aiming for the playoffs, having seen Wales Online putting us at 12th. But I genuinely, I don't think we've got much of an excuse this year. I know there's all the WRU stuff going on, but internally things are good. Things are good off the field. Good ownership group. Good chief executive and so on and so forth. We've recruited well. I think everyone agree we've recruited well, especially in the areas that we needed it. We may be like Euro there, but if we can have some luck with injuries, which we don't normally have, then I don't think we've got much of an excuse not to perform, much better really than we did last year. And in addition, I suppose, lastly, I don't know whether you've seen the kits, but we probably win the kit competition as well. The
As
home
usual.
kit, as usual, the home kit, I thought when that came out was okay. I was just kind of on the fence about that, but then I think they knocked it out the park with the away strip, those traditional Gwent colours of navy blue, the old Monmouthshire crest on the other side of the chest as well. So good on the Dragons, and I will say that I've been impressed with the Dragons' community efforts over the summer, really. I know they've gone around, I think they went to Pontypool United, Caldicot, they come up to Abbott Lady, Caerphilly. They launched a home kit at a big community day down at Rodney Parade. So, they are embracing regional rugby, I would say. They're based in Ystrad Mynach, play out to Newport. What do we want to get rid of them for? And that's my two penny worth about the Dragons. I don't know what you guys think, but on paper, at least, we're looking okay, aren't we?
Well, I said, I mean, when it comes to, we'll do Cardiff and Scarlets next week preview, so a lot of those names are going to come back up when I talk about our second team moving away, establishing themselves in Gwent. But so Dan, for you, you said it's got to be better this year, and you can't see any excuse why it wouldn't be. How much better do you think? Where do you think you're going to come in the league? Do you think there needs to be a bit more focus on Europe, or or do you think Philo should sack off Europe again this year? Where do you think you're?
Well, I think we've added a bit more to the depth chart. A proper run in Europe would be nice, wouldn't it, in the Challenge Cup? And you're looking at the players that I've just named: Wyn Jones, Dylan Lewis, Hunt, Davis, Young, Tinas De Beer. There's enough depth there, I think, to have a bit of a run in that competition. Ultimately, if we do start picking up a couple of injuries, I think we need to prioritise the URC. If you look at the URC fixtures leading up to Di Flanagan's exit from the Dragons, we weren't far away. We beat the Ospreys opening day, and then we were losing by a score, or just over a score to, who did we lose to? Was it, the Lions at home, and so on and so forth. And if we can win these games at the start of this season, or the equivalent of, depending on how our fixtures drop, then we hold ourselves in good stead. And I think it's a little bit of a cheesy old line, isn't it? But winning's a habit. I think losing is a habit, and as soon as you start and that snowball starts rolling down the mountain, Hattie will probably put a nod to this. I think that, Wales women are probably in that rut now where it becomes a habit. The senior men's team for Wales have been in that habit over 18 games. It took some breaking, and I think it's going to take some breaking for the Dragons as well. But it is a fresh start. We have performed well, albeit this pre-season fixtures, but there have been some green shoots there for me, especially around the set piece and the way we attacked from the highlights that I saw against the Scarlet. So, winning one rugby match all season's not good enough, especially the first one. I think the Dragons faithful deserve more than that. And based on those signings, I think we can do exactly that.
Could I just ask you what out of all of the teams, obviously derbies are one thing, but outside of the derbies, which team or which teams would you like to see the Dragons realistically or unrealistically beat this season? Who would you say is like the one that you want to get?
I think realistically, especially if we play a couple of South African teams, we got a fixture list in front of us here.
If you want, do you want your first 5 games?
Yeah, we got Ulster first, then the Sharks. If the Sharks, for example, coming over just after an international block, I think is a good thing. That should be a targeted game for us. Ulster haven't been no great shakes over the last few weeks. If we can go and sneak a win away at Ulster, I think that's massive. These are the types of fixtures, especially Ulster come into Rodney Parade. We should be looking to pick them off. Glasgow away, maybe a step too far for us, depending on what sort of team Glasgow play with them. Then we've got 2 home fixtures, Cardiff and Ospreys at home. If we can win those 3 home fixtures, which I don't think is an unreasonable ask, then we're well set, and we've sort of tripled last year's effort already, haven't we? So to answer your question, Hattie, I think the Welsh derby's a bit more of a lottery, aren't they? I think we can do better in those. But those travelling sides, I think Rodney Parade really needs to become more of a fortress. We may struggle away from home. I can't see us winning in Leinster or Munster. But Connacht coming over. We've beaten Munster previously at home. We can turn over Ulster, and those South African sides. I think we stand a chance of beating them at Rodney Parade. Different ask completely over in South Africa. I get that, but those are the fixtures that I'd be targeting. Home fixtures, and there's no reason why we can't pick up a few more wins in the Challenge Cup as well.
Nice.
Right, so I'm going to put people on the line now. Producer Lee is going to write these down and put them in an envelope ready for the end of the season. So I want everyone to just very quickly say final position they think for the Dragons and where they think they're going to come in Europe. So we're going to start with Dan, as it is your team.
Where are we going to come in the league? I think we make quarterfinals of. I think we got the ability to make quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup this year with a player pool we got. If we take it seriously, if not, we go out in the group stage, which I'm okay with. And I sort of said tongue in cheek earlier on that, with the player profile that we've got, we can make the playoffs. But the big thing for me, I think, would be if we're not the worst Welsh team. So that's a bit of a cop-out in terms of league position, isn't it, really? 10th. And that would be with the Welsh team below us, mind. So I'd rather finish 8th and have a couple of Welsh teams below us. But I'd like not to be the worst Welsh team this season. I think that's got to be the target for the Dragons. If we can finish above one of the other regions, I think it's been a successful season for us.
Hattie, do you want to?
So I think potentially there might not be a focus on Europe, so I don't think they're going to make it out of the group stage. I think it'd be sensible to concentrate on the URC. So I think group stage exit, unfortunately. But I'm going to be hopeful and say 10th with Zebra and Ulster below.
Right, so I'm going to give mine next. So I'm going to give mine next, and then Nick can give his, and Nick just reel straight off into the Ospreys after that. Okay. So I think in terms of league, I think Dragons are going to be about 13th. They're going to be a bit better. Just thinking there are other teams who are going to be a bit better, and I can't see how many teams can drop below. And also,
Cardiff being
because
one.
they're going to lose both their games to Cardiff because it's just what happens.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That record's got to end at some point, doesn't it? It's got to go at some point. Why not this season?
How many games is it now?
Well, there's 640. I don't know.
It's since 2015. It's over a decade now.
Nice.
It's and then I think I agree with Dan. I think Dragons probably I got a weird feeling they might try and push for some silverware just as a quick boost, and Challenge Cup's probably the easiest way to do that. However, with the teams that drop down, I think we're going to see it's going to become less and less likely that a team that starts in the Challenge Cup is going to win. With those those very ranked teams coming down, particularly if they have a shocking first round from the Champions Cup. So I think quarterfinals. And I said, then we'll move on to Nick and get onto the Osprey stuff.
Before I start, I do think they've recruited pretty well, particularly in the front row. I think they will be very competitive in the front row, which is something the Dragons have struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I can't see all the other teams trying to do as well as improve as well, aren't they? So you've got to think about who you're going to finish above. I do think they'll finish above Zebra, but I'm going for they'll win. I think they'll win 4 or 5 games at home. I can't see them winning on the road. But obviously that's a lot better than last season. So that's probably going to leave them 15th and round of 16 in Europe.
I can't wait for you all to eat humble pie.
I'd be more than happy to.
I was nice.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait.
All right, shall we get the Ospreys preseason so Dan can get his own back? Start getting his own back on people.
Well, obviously, just ins and outs of the club. Obviously, the big loss is obviously one of the best players who I think has worn the Osprey shirt ever, all Wales. And Justin Tiplick, obviously, we all know is retired now from the game. It's interesting. I was heard a bit of the Cardiff Central interview with Debbie Cross, and best player he's ever played with was the man in the blue cap, and it's players at all levels have said that. Lions have said that. So that's a huge, fantastic career and a big loss. I think they recruited pretty well. We've also lost Will Griffiths, who's a really good player. Had very similar to unfortunately had problems with injury. He's gone very quietly, but he's not appeared on our website or our app. And all the players in the UK. So wish him for all the very best. We've also lost Tristan Davis to the Scarlets. So, but we've also, and obviously Adam Beard as well, which seems quite long ago now since we knew that Adam would be going to Montpellier, and I think he got on the field on Saturday. So we've recruited Ryan Smith from the Queensland Reds. So potentially a like for like there as a lineup organizer. We've also recruited Ross Moriarty. And I still think Ross has got something to give in the game. He's still only 31. He had a lot of injury problems last year, but he did appear and played for 40 minutes, 50 minutes in the friendly against Exeter. So, and we've also recruited Harry Williams, who's a scrum half. So we've got, and also Evan Daniels has come in as another hooker. So in certain positions, we've sort of got a lot of depth. Like hooker, we've got 5 potential players who could play. Scrum half, we got 4 because obviously Hardy came in last year. I do have concerns about 10. I think Lou Scully picked up an injury in pre-seasons and he's sort of the backup 10. Although we must remember, of course, Jack Walsh originally came in as a 10 when he came in from Exeter and had played there quite a lot, but also has been very effective at 15. A lot of our players are in the 20, sort of below 25 to 30. We haven't got an awful lot of players post 30. Tom Botha is still key though, and he's 35. So a lot will depend on us keeping him fit, and then just interchanging the other props. I think we have probably still got the best second rows available to any of the Welsh regions. With Rhys Davis missed a lot of last year with injury. James Ratty is a very steady player, a very good player, gives his all, can play 6 as well, of course. And James Fender with Ryan Smith, and then Hugh Sutton didn't play much last year, and Lewis Jones. So you've got a little bit of backup there in the front and the second row. Obviously, we've got Harry Deeves, who's a really, really good player to back up Jack. And we've also brought in William Evans, another one who was formerly with Cardiff, was he? Harley? I can't remember, actually. He certainly played for the 20s, didn't he? Big year for Morgan Morse, I feel, this year. He's obviously been a lot of promise. Didn't get selected for the under-20s World Cup. Didn't get selected for the Welsh main team. So he's had a full summer of training. So I think he's got potential to push on. And obviously Morgan Morris is there as perhaps the starting 8. We'll have Dan Cassende and Everardi Boshoff had a full pre-season. They came in a bit late last year after the Currie Cup matches for Cheetahs. So hopefully they're fit and ready to go and prove themselves to be good players. Owen Watkin, hopefully we'll be back before too long. He was playing really well until he got injured for Wales playing in Paris. And then obviously a nasty injury. So, I think we've got a lot of potential. It's like, what I am concerned, what my concern about is around perhaps back up to Tom Beaufort at tight end, back up then to Dan Edwards, if he, some of the time when he was with Wales, and certainly if he picked up an injury, I would be a little bit worried about our depth at 10. I am also concerned that we only played one pre-season game, and I went to watch that, and first half we were not really in the races at all, outpowered by Exeter. They changed their team at half time, and the score line was closer. Our scrum obviously improved when Tom Botha came on. A lot of players interchange, as often happens in pre-season games. But we now go to South Africa for 2 games, and that's a real tough ask. I think we'll be undercooked. I know the South African teams in the first few games will not have their Springbok players. They're still, because the rugby championship is still going on, but they've still got a lot of depth, any South African team, and they won't be undercooked because a lot of them will have played Currie Cup. And I saw the Bulls put out a really strong team for their last game. Used it as a warm-up for the URC players. So anything we can pick up in those first 2 games is a bonus. But then on the positive side, I don't think many teams will like coming to Bridgend, to the brewery. So as well, the first game showed the Ospreys playing side of things have got an awful lot to do off the pitch. Certainly the Ospreys backup team have got an awful lot trying to get the brewery field in a better condition for the first URC game. And I'm not talking about the pitch, Harley. I'm talking about the facilities around the ground. So first 5, I don't think we do. I do think we'll beat the Dragons. It's like away. It's like you say with Dan with the beating Cardiff. What these records have to change sometime. I'm going for it. I'm going for it this year. And then I think we've got then third game. We've got Zebra at home. Glasgow home is a tough call, but it's going to be small changing rooms, raucous night. But I still, obviously Glasgow are a very good team, and I can't remember our 5th game now. It's Dragons.
Your 5th game is the Dragons, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say the one advantage with Glasgow is they've had a lot, as far as I understand, they've had an awful lot of change with a lot of their top Scotland players moving on to bigger contracts. So you might be able to catch them cold.
Yeah.
But also, Franco Smith he's making his name for working with young, lesser known players. So
yeah,
I think that's going to be a hard one. But I think it's possibly the worst start for any of the 4 Welsh teams. I think with starting with Bulls and ending the Stormers and Cape Ben.
Yeah. So anything we pick up, as I say, is South Africa. But I do think after that, I can't see us losing many games at the Brewery Field. It's not a great place to come. I don't think other teams will like it. So, and then it's just picking up whatever points we can on the road. So I'm sort of thinking around about 47, 48 points come the end of the season. And that'll probably take us to being the top team, as Stefan Thomas knows his rugby. Although I'm not as positive as Stefan, I still think that would only take us up to about 10th, maybe 9th. But I fully expect us to be the highest performing Welsh team again.
So you spoke about URC, you've nailed your mast there. What about Europe?
I'm not bothered about Europe this year, to be honest with you. Round of 16 away game, and if we lose, that's it.
Fair enough. Dan Hattie, anything you want to add about Ospreys to start off with? Any predictions?
I guess for me, I feel like they're either going to do relatively well or they're really going to surprise us and do poorly. I think going to Brewery Fields it could either go really well, and you could have the kind of like, they're not great facilities, but at least the Ospreys are used to it, whatever. Or it could backfire pretty badly and you lose any home advantage because it's a different place and it's, worse conditions. I know a friend of mine, Rihanna from Back the Girls, has said that she's not going to be able to go to any of the games because it's not a wheelchair accessible site. So I think stuff like that, like you're just purposely losing fans by making that change. But yeah, it could be really interesting to see what happens. I'm not quite sure. I don't know whether they're going to leapfrog and do really well and surprise us all, or be Dan's team that does worse than the Dragons. It could go either way for me.
Dan?
Yeah, I think the Brewery Field thing is going to be a factor. I don't think South African teams are going to go in there. I don't think it'll be that much of a factor for the Welsh teams visiting, if I'm honest. A lot of them would have played SRC and so on and so forth, would have grown up playing in and around those sort of grounds. So I don't think that's going to be so much of a factor for an advantage, if you like, playing against the Welsh teams in the derbies. But I don't think South African teams will go in there. Probably the same, if you're a big shot at Leinster, do you fancy a wet night at the brewery? Maybe not. So there could be an advantage to be had there. On a personnel perspective, I think you might be a bit light this year, Nick. Is 4 signings coming in enough? And are they the sort of players that you think? I think you might get a bit out of Moriarty, but unfortunately, I think you might also lose him to the national team. That could be a problem for you. And Ryan Smith, I think, could be a good sign in. we saw what he could do against the Lions, and he's obviously Super Rugby material, so he could do all right. I think the biggest loss for me is Justin Tipperick. Whenever he's taken the field for, well, any rugby team that he's played for, but especially the Ospreys, you could name him man of the match every week. That's the levels there. And I just wonder whether, Nick touched upon it, everything seems to be a little bit underwhelming at the Ospreys over pre-season. The St. Helens stuff, all the backroom stuff that's been going on. Lance Bradley's always got a beer in his hand and nor his arm around a new signing, or a spade in the turf at St. Helens. Everything seems to be dragging on a little bit. The season ticket, the thing came out really late. It all just seems a little bit underwhelming. So I don't know. Traditionally, the Ospreys have been the best performing, arguably the best performing team, or they've certainly been up there from the Welsh Four regions. I just think this year, I didn't think the result down at Exeter was particularly great. Are you going to be undercooked coming into it, 2 trips away? And I just look genuinely, I look at it from a Dragons perspective compared to what we've recruited and what we've lost compared to what the Ospreys have recruited and what they've lost. I think we've done better business. Is it enough to level the playing field? Only time will tell. But yeah, I'm unsure on the Ospreys at the moment, based on those factors.
Yeah, I think I echo Dan's comments, but I am going to press you both, Hattie. Hattie was sort of trying to sit on the fence, so I am going to press you. I would like a European prediction. I'd love a URC prediction from you both, please.
I said the Dragons 10th or 11th, didn't I? So I don't know. I'll go big. I'll say they're going to come 12th or 13th. And Europe, I think they might potentially do like a reverse of the Dragons, where I think the Dragons maybe won't concentrate on Europe and will concentrate on doing slightly better. Whereas I think for the Ospreys, because they haven't got the greatest first couple of matches, they might try and do better in Europe. I don't know. I don't know if any of this makes any sense. So maybe they might make it out of the group, but round of 16 max in Europe.
Yeah, I think the Ospreys get out of their group. Quarter-finalists last year, Nick, or last 16, was it quarter-finalists last year? I think they've got the ability to get there. I think you probably hit the nail on the head, Harley. I think anyone will then struggle against some of those bigger clubs that drop down. Especially if they're from France, then there may be a struggle there. But they've certainly, if they're going to take it seriously and they're going to throw their eggs across into both baskets, then quarterfinals, no problem. I can see that. In terms of the league, I don't know. I genuinely think for me it's going to be feast or famine this year for the Ospreys. I don't think there's going to be any in between. I think they're either going to be right up there in the playoffs, sort of 6th, 7th, and make a good stand for it because there's good coaching staff there. They'll play a decent brand of rugby this season. They've got that continuity with Mark Jones now as well. He's had a pre-season and all that sort of, the sort of 1/3 Toby Booth, 2/3 Mark Jones. I think it's either going to be feast or famine. So they're either going to be up there or swapping positions with the Dragons. Not at the bottom because I think they'll be better than Zebra and one or two others. But yeah, lowest position at 12th, best position is 7th. What do you need me to nail my colours to one of those?
Leon sure pick one. I'm sure he'll decide whichever one's the most wrong in when we get to the end of the season.
Yeah, all right, I'll go somewhere in the middle then and go 9th. There you go. How do you like those apples?
So it works for me.
Works for you.
I agree, Dan. I think it could be feast or famine. I think it's gonna hinge on two things. One again injuries, because Ospreys like Dragon both had horrific injury records last year, particularly when their second row issues. And I do think once you take out once you weaken the type 5 of the Ospreys, they quite get atable, especially into the Booth era. And then I think with Mark Jones and the way he was trying to shift things up, the forwards were having to do a lot more than was been asked of in the past. They got tired a lot quicker, and I think we saw that in like the Judgment Day game and their quarterfinal game in Europe. That almost too much was asked of them.
And
That
and
said,
this,
go on then.
no, and this is where I think the Dragons maybe have done a little bit better business. Like Nick was on about the reliance on someone like Tom Botha at tight end. We all know that tight end's a cornerstone of that scrum, anybody's scrum. Whereas this year, that well, the Dragons can start with you can start with Lewis, bring on Hunt. You've got Chrissy Coleman in the squad as well. Ultimately,
Wales international Chris Coleman. I think we need to use his full title there.
Well, I think he's been coined Super Chrissy Coleman, to use his official term, Sir Christopher Coleman of Gwent, in a couple of years' time, no doubt about it. But these are the options that the Dragons have got now, whereas we haven't previously got that. If both is injured, are we reliant on Nick?
Ben Warren, Rhys Henry.
Ben Warren, Rhys Henry, for me, that's the difference. I don't think for me, there's a drop off there. Whereas for me, the Dragons don't lose too much. We're swapping those around. That also, our boys around, and that also gives us a little bit of continuity and the ability to rotate that squad to try and keep people fresh.
I think that's true of when we come to next week as well. I think we're all just a couple of players short of having really decent squads, and so you are very reliant on and for us not losing a tight head or an outside half. It might be slightly different for another team, but that I would like to have recruited another. I would like Robert Hunt to sign for the Ospreys, and I would like a sort of like an Owen Williams type player we lost. So I should have mentioned Owen, an experienced 10 to step in when needed 3 or 4 times a season, and so you're then very dependent on keeping your best players on the pitch.
Also, I was just going to say, it's going to be interesting whenever you have a player transition from playing to coaching. It can either go extremely well and they take to it like a duck to water, or it can go not great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could be interesting to see what happens with Tipperick there. Is he coming in? Is it defence coach that he's coming in as?
Yeah.
Like, it's a big role for somebody who's never had to coach at that level. I know that they said that he was transitioning at the end of last year, but it's a big jump. I know like Sam Warburton came out when he retired and went straight into the Wales camp, and he left after like one campaign because he was like, I just wasn't ready. So it could be interesting to see what happens there. He could be excellent because it's Tipperick, and he's been excellent so far with everything at rugby, or it could go badly wrong.
I did see a good sign, Hattie. As he was coming down the stand, he's got a new clipboard.
Well, that's what you want from a coach, isn't it? A new clipboard, nice shiny whistle, and a clean pair of boots.
He had a new clipboard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. This is a bit off topic, but I was in Bristol at the weekend, and I was walking down to Ashton Gate, and this couple got out of their van, and they were both in dry robes, and I was like, oh, as you do. And then I looked in their van, and they had dry robe car seats.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should point out the
haven.
interest in it. So I should point out the interest in this is the long running joke on the back channels for the Women's Rugby Treehouse of that Sean should just hang around the Gatlin's Gate wearing a dry robe whilst we were waiting for a new coach, just because then they might hire them.
That's all you need to do. You need to hang around like a Welsh stadium in a dry robe and a clipboard, and you will get hired as some form of coach, either Gwalia Lightning, Brython Thunder, etc.
Also works if your name is Ashley Beck. If your name is Ashley Beck, you will automatically be put forward to jobs, even if you didn't apply.
4 jobs, and your budget is a packet of Quavers and an Amazon gift card of £25. That's all you get.
Just moving back, because we could go on tangents all night, and Yap City is officially trademarked by the women's pod, so we'll park that there. Because someone will have pointed out I haven't done my predictions. I'm going to predict Ospreys 14th but I think they're finally going to break their European quarterfinal hoodoo, and I think they might sneak into the semi-final due to a favourable draw.
Yes, yeah, maybe. I don't know what you guys think, but modern rugby for me is all about the collision area, both sides of the ball. Can you win enough collisions? And when you look through the makeup of your squads, and you guys will do it next week, and Nick and I have done it now, is there enough collision winners in your squad to win enough games?
I would argue we have, because they're 2 or 3 years down the line now. A lot of those players, and we got, so we can put a decent pack out every week.
And I'd argue that you've previously had that as well, Nick, and I would say that's something that the Dragons have struggled with over the last few seasons. But I got the squad in front of me now, and I'm looking at, right, is our set piece going to be okay, and can the front row win some collisions when they gotta run the ball? And you're looking Wyn Jones, Dylan Lewis, Robert Hunt, Rodrigo Martinez, Chris Coleman. Yeah, I think they can. Elliot D, Brody Coughlin. Yeah, they can. Levi Douglas, Seb Davis, Ben Carter. There's enough grunt in that front five, I think, to do enough. Back row, Tom Young can win collisions. Funaki, we haven't seen him yet, but he's a South Sea Islander. That's literally their trademark, isn't it? They love collisions. Harry Keddy, Shane Lewis Hughes, Aaron Wainwright, Mackenzie Martin. I am looking at these things. Then even in midfield, we got Harry Ackerman coming back after a lengthy layoff. He can win collisions. Player Inisi, there are collision winners now in the Dragon side that we haven't had previously. And I think, I'm really hoping, and it's the hope that kills you, I know, but we can win enough collisions to win more games of rugby this season. And I generally think when you look across your squads for when you have a go at it next week for your predictions for Cardiff and whatnot, that's going to be the key. Are you going to win enough collisions this year? If not, I think you're going to struggle, because the South African teams will win collisions. Your Leinsters, your Munsters, they'll win collisions. Glasgow will win collisions. If you can't do that, you're struggling. You're really, really struggling. So fingers crossed. We're a little bit further down the line than we have been previously.
Just a little bit of a side thing. We've got a saying up here: "Born in hope, die in Kaigule," which is the next village where the cemetery is. So. Oh, I don't know, Dan. Yeah, it's the best time to have a bit of hope to start the season, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give too many spoilers for my Cardiff preview, but I think it might also explain why some of our sort of players that we've sort of swapped out, who have gone off to Dragons and Ospreys mostly, where I think we've gone for them as opposed to necessarily trying to retain what we've already got. One thing that we've been talking about is Scarlets did really well last season and had very few injuries. Ospreys on paper should have been one of the best sides. I'm sure you don't mind me saying that, Nick.
No,
just on the squad, but they had
season.
Injuries. Yeah. Dragons had a lot of promise. Then as soon as the injuries mounted up, that was it. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that it goes to show with when we're talking about increasing the budgets to the regions. It's not that we need that money to be competitive, because we've shown that the teams can be competitive on these. What it is to be competitive with enough depth that we can.
Yeah.
So that's just one of those things. So I don't think we necessarily need mega budgets. We just need enough to make sure that we've got a good squad throughout, and we're not having to call up, going to South Africa with the academy and pulling up some guys from the part-timers from the SLC.
Yeah.
I think one guy Welsh Premiership as well that got taken on tour for the Dragons last time. Yeah. I mean, at that point, I'm starting to worry about safety concerns.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like when you look at like Ireland, like any of the Irish teams, when they're having to call people up, it's a huge deal, and it happens maybe once per season. They're calling a guy up from AIL, and it's I can't believe we didn't have the depth in X position. It's usually a front rower, and there's somebody saying like, "Oh no, we shouldn't have to do that because of safety concerns." And I feel like in Wales, especially last season, we just saw it constantly, and it's because our squad size just isn't big enough to maintain at a professional level in any capacity. I mean, even the squad sizes for the PWR, which is the Women's Premiership, is larger than the Welsh URC teams, and they play less games per season. So,
Can I just?
That is a massive factor, you know,
Mm.
injury management. And when, you know, you mentioned the funding, and we've talked about the campus setup before, and this, that, and the other. Maybe that doesn't need to be home to two teams, but maybe it could be home to, like, you know, like a national medical centre and a national S&C centre or whatever it may be, where, you know, we know that all the pro rugby players in Wales are going to go and get the best medical treatment they can in order to keep them fit. You know, wouldn't that be a good investment?
Yeah, definitely. Just one thing I think perhaps, you know, we need to say for all the teams now, is that all this uncertainty for all the players and their families and going into pre-season, it's not the best place for them to be mentally going into a new season. You know, we'd be facing probably end of October when we finish this first block, and who knows, we could be losing one team, two teams, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. What a you know, what a horrible feeling to ultimately be going to work in. And, you know, whilst we say some bits tongue in cheek on here and we're saying, oh, so and so finished in this position and this, that, and the other, you know, I genuinely hope that every Welsh region
Mm.
bats well above their average and puts the pressure on everybody else. You know, what a motivator mind for a squad of players. You know,
That's a good point, Dan.
if I was in those meeting rooms, I'd be saying, look,
Yeah.
you're playing for the future of Welsh rugby in theory. I know it sounds a bit like Hollywood movie-esque, but that's literally what you're doing now. This is not just a case of going out and being able to get yourself up to perform on a professional basis. This is, if you want to play professional rugby moving forward in Wales, especially, you've got to go out and win some rugby matches.
Yeah.
You know, take yourself to a place physically and mentally that you've never been before, because you need to go there now. You've got to go out, you know, at the end of the season, if we can sit here on a wrap-up podcast, and I can hand on my heart go, look, I genuinely think the Dragons, whatever comes of it, they've gone out on their shield this year.
Yeah.
They've gone out on their shield. Even if we finish bottom again, but those, you know, but we lose games by, you know, 1 point instead of 60 points. We've gone out on our shield this year, and the boys have given it their best. If we can all say that, then they've done their jobs, and good on them.
Yeah,
I can tell you, single point margins of loss get really frustrating after a while. I know even from where you're coming from, but trust me, you do get very fed up with it.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I'm hosting. I'm gonna have last word because I can. Especially on this topic, the romantic in me just really wants all four to channel their inner zebra from last season, when they were told that they were basically not, most of them were basically didn't have a job at the end of the season, and the performances they were putting in, week out. Yes, ultimately they only won five games, came close in support. They really should have beaten Benetton in both their derbies over Christmas. But this, just the sheer passion, it made the Italian Rugby Union change their mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it basically said, actually, no, we're not going to sell this franchise spot now. The players have shown that they can be competitive throughout. And if all four can do that, and you turn around to W and say, look, even this meager slither that you feel that you've deigned to give us, we can be, you know, we can do this. We don't need the 8, you know, 2 teams with £8 million. Maybe 4 teams on 5.5, 6 million. Right? Maybe we're not going to be winning Europe every year, but at least we've got somewhere to improve, and there we've got a potential to grow, and that's where we can start. Maybe, you know, if we can't put 4 pro regions and 4 pro women's teams as well, you know, maybe let's just build up Brithon and Gwalia where they are right now, build them up, and then we can do something. You know, with the women's game, let's use that as an opportunity to learn from the mistakes of the men's game.
They don't have to mirror each other exactly.
No.
Right.
Absolutely not. I mean, shared infrastructure. There's a lot to be said for shared infrastructure, but equally, let's treat them differently in ways that will help improve that game better and learning from our mistakes. With that, unless someone has something they really want to call me up on that last little almost Lee-esque soliloquy at the end, thank you to my co-host Hattie, Dan, Nick. Thank you once again for Ben Breakspear for giving us some time. Producer Lee has sent me a note during recording to ask those of you watching on YouTube to hype this video. I don't know. I may not be the oldest person on here, but mentally I am, and I'm dealing with a 5-week-old. And I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't really touched a computer since the last time we recorded. So with all of that, thank you, enjoy your rugby, and good night.
Good night.
Ta-ra.
Bye.